Thank you.
That's very kind, Chairman. I had a single, very concrete suggestion to make linking climate change and women's issues at Copenhagen, and that is that the women should demand immediate climate change-related funding to meet the unmet demand for family reproductive health care facilities in the poorest countries. The underfunding of the UNFPA in this respect is large, and it's a crime against women. So that is my suggestion. Make a climate change case for meeting that unmet demand and liberate women from the 43% of their pregnancies, which are, according to the UNFPA, unwanted. Thank you.
Barbara, how difficult is it to raise funding for women's issues, or specifically for women?
I think that depends. I mean, a number of different foundations and bodies now do recognise the importance of all the things we've been talking about, girls' education, reproductive rights and so on. So some money is available, but I don't think money is a problem, and it certainly is on adaptation where it's not being talked about. But I don't think that's the key issue. It is the women's empowerment issue and what women's roles are and so on. But, well, I've got the mic. I was just going to try and bring a bit of this together, because we're not going to solve the whole of women's empowerment issues in the next 6 months. However, we can do two things in the next 6 months, I think. One is that we can make these negotiations in Copenhagen different in all the ways that we've been talking about, by getting more women into them, by getting the delegations to understand the gender issues better, making the demands, as you said, or I think it was you actually, Minister Gartner, about the Adaptation Fund for Africa, making sure that that is going to go significantly to women. There are a lot of things that can be done in this negotiation, and everybody in this room could go back to their own countries and start asking what's doing on all this. We could take, you know, everybody is individually responsible for these things too, and people can, with the powers that they have, go back and do something about this. Now, we can, I think, change the negotiations in Copenhagen, and therefore I hope be more successful for Princess Haya's absolute centrality. We have to save the world in this, I'm afraid, as well. This is not just a women's issue or something. It is about all of us and saving the world. The great advantage of us doing something to make COP different would be that it would show for once that negotiations could be done differently, and actually that could also help in the long term on all the issues about gender and women's empowerment that we've been discussing this morning. And I really do think it would be good if people took their own responsibility. May I make... What's different? It's Robert's point that actually we've got 6 months and we've got an enormous job to do, but the pressure will be on. You know, all the meetings that are taking place. There are plenty of places that we can insert ourselves and make these cases all the time, in our own countries or in the various groupings. You know, I know Mary's going on to Copenhagen at the end of this week, and I'm sure Mary will do absolutely everything she can on the gender issues, but all of us are in different places. We all have our own ways of influencing things, and we should take those opportunities.
Negotiations on getting women on there, or are there negotiations on finding solutions to climate change? Again, we seem to be...
Well, they're both. They're both. No, I mean, I think they're absolutely both. They're both because women's issues must be part of the negotiations, and one way to help that is to have women there. But in any case, women are half of humanity and should be there. You know, it's the both, I think.
Special pleading to have women on the negotiations, to have women represented, to have gender issues put on the table. The process is important because it will influence the outcome. I think it's enormously important that we've got people like Margaret Chan who are making the World Health Organization finally climate literate. We've got the head of the World Food Programme who is doing the same thing in terms of food issues. This is a new world. We've got the host who is a woman. We've got so many powerful women who understand the importance of using climate change COP15 as an opportunity for renewal, for making sure that all of the issues that count to us are brought to the fore. Right now we're talking about gender, so very pragmatic things. Don't let this conversation fizzle out when we walk out the door. Make sure that the call from this meeting is about making sure that there is gender parity on the negotiations, and that we have every country which is putting forward national action mitigation plans so that they can get access to development finance and adaptation finance has a gender mainstreamed national action plan.
Thank you very much. We've almost run out of time. You've been patient with us since this early on, but very quickly, please, and then we have 2 very quick questions. We have to do all these 3 questions in less than 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Renate Blum from Civicus, and old activist for women's, children's and human rights in general. I agree actually what you have said all. But what you want, I wanted to see one thing is we need to make the connections more. And if we do not connect, what you said with Margaret Chang, we need to connect where the people are. When we are in Africa, we need to bring this agenda into African women's agenda. If this does not interact and interconnect, then this is out there somewhere, which has no really something for the women. So this is the interconnection. And I remember Mary Robinson, when we were at the Durban conference, we brought the African women who were just discussing the African protocol on women's human rights. And we brought the racism together. And since then, and we had just the Durban Review conference, and African women came here to tell their story. And you should have heard, this was fantastic, because it was the interaction of the human rights field with what they have learned in the meantime, and not only learned, they have achieved. And the main achievement is, of course, that it is their governments have put really women's human rights first. And the stories of Mozambique and Uganda and of many, many countries are really fantastic. But it also needs each time the budget for all these issues. Yes. And that is also primary. And I think the budget for Copenhagen is therefore absolutely vital.
And we'll pick up where you left off talking about money here.
Okay, I've been asked to be very brief. Michael Keating from the Africa Progress Panel. I think availability of funding for adaptation is obviously a huge issue. The other issue is the mechanism whereby the money is actually used. And Melina, most African countries have national adaptation plans of action. They ain't working. They're not working. They are not serving as vehicles for turning money into results on the ground. And this is a fundamentally important issue. How do you make money work? And if you can demonstrate results with money, then the likelihood of mobilizing more money will increase. So my question would be, given that women are infinitely more practical than men, what role can women play in making these mechanisms actually work and deliver results on the ground? I know there is a session on financing at 11 o'clock. This is sort of advertisement for it. Maybe that's something we should focus on. Thank you.
Does anyone have an answer to that question?